The wellness solution we'll talk about today is astaxanthin. Let me frame the wellness solutions segment of our show. Natural health products are just one of many wellness solutions that people consider when they're trying to get well. Whether it's a herb, a vitamin, a fat, an oil, an extract, if it comes in a pill, we call it a natural health product. This also includes some topical ointments, homeopathic drops, etc. But wellness solutions also include acupuncturists, massage therapists, physical therapists, chiropractors, hypnosis providers, Reiki practitioners, therapists, counselors. Any provider who delivers a service, that intervention is something that may or may not help you. And your journey is all about finding the interventions that work for you, because we're all different. And the only way to pursue personalized, evidence-based medicine is to make yourself the subject of an N of 1 trial. And of course, we all need to embrace the insights that we get from evidence-based medicine, large clinical trials that tell us that if you take 5,000 people and you give half of them intervention A and half of them a placebo, the half that got intervention A overall did better than the half that got placebo. Does that mean that intervention A is going to work for you? Not necessarily. So while clinical trials do represent important sources of evidence, when you're on a wellness journey that is focused on an N of 1, what really matters is what works for you. So in some cases, you can decide for yourself whether a symptom or a problem responded to an intervention, whether your headaches are better, whether you're sleeping more soundly, whether your bowel movements are more regular. These are things that you're entitled to have an opinion on. But when it comes to something like brain health, you may need to work with an expert, because the only way you can tell if something is working is by identifying something that you want to measure. It might be a symptom, it might be a blood test, or an imaging report. And you need to be clear about what you're trying to improve. That's what we call rational prescribing. But we're going to start with something that is maybe not the easiest thing to gauge from a rational prescribing perspective, but what the heck? Let's start with caviar. Not necessarily the classic sort of black sturgeon caviar, but salmon roe. The red caviar that is super rich in a carotenoid called astaxanthin. Carotenoid sounds like carrot, a family of chemicals that makes fruits and vegetables look yellow, orange, red in that spectrum. And the carotenoids include vitamin E, also called alpha-tocopherol, and other carotenoids with names like lutein and zeaxanthin and astaxanthin, beta-tocopherol, gamma-tocopherol, and they all bind to one receptor. And that's why multivitamins are dangerous. You heard that correctly. Many studies have suggested that people who take multivitamins have somewhat of an increased risk of heart disease and cancer. Now, why would that be? Well, one of the hypotheses is that because most multivitamins contain a lot of vitamin E in the form of alpha-tocopherol, this saturates the receptor and prevents the body from absorbing the other members of the carotenoid family, which may be more potent and important in terms of healing the immune system. So if you take a vitamin E supplement every day, you may be preventing yourself from absorbing the good medicines in the fruits and vegetables that we all evolved to be nourished and healed by. So astaxanthin happens to be red. And the reason that it's so rich in salmon roe is that salmon eat krill. And krill eat microalgae, a very specific species of microalgae called Haematococcus pluvialis. And under conditions of stress, this little algae, this single-celled organism, turns from green to red. It produces a pigment called astaxanthin, which is a very potent quencher of reactive oxygen species. Very powerful anti-inflammatory, one of the most powerful in nature. So this is one of the reasons why it's a good idea to eat salmon. Incidentally, farmed salmon is rarely as naturally pink as astaxanthin, so it's often colored with an artificial pigment to make it look like a natural, healthy fish. Probably better to eat wild salmon, about 2 to 3 milligrams per serving. You can also find astaxanthin in tiger prawns. Those red-colored triangular zigzags on the back of a tiger prawn are pigmented with astaxanthin, another 5 to 10 milligrams per serving. But salmon roe contain about 100 milligrams per 100-gram serving. So whether you put your caviar on cream cheese or a biscuit, whether you eat it as an appetizer or have it with sushi, it may be a good idea to introduce some salmon roe to your diet for a brain healthy, elegant afternoon tea. And you can also get astaxanthin in capsule form, obviously. In most cases, it's derived from the microalgae that produces it. So very low on the food chain, very sustainably harvested. And a trial of astaxanthin may be worthwhile for anywhere from 2 to 3 months to see if what we would call brain health improves. Maybe you're trying to improve ADHD. Maybe you're struggling with depression or anxiety. Maybe you're having problems with cognitive function, or maybe you've had a concussion. Maybe you've got memory problems and you're struggling at school. Whatever the reason, you can assume that all of these symptoms, whether they fall under the category of neurology or psychiatry or learning disorder, they all reflect brain health. They reflect the health of this organ that regulates everything else about you. So this is the final common pathway for any disturbance in your system. And there are many anti-inflammatory, antioxidant, reactive oxygen species targeting remedies that you could take. But I think it's important to integrate food as medicine whenever possible. And I think that astaxanthin is one of these really interesting, fundamentally important, potentially powerful interventions that deserves more attention. There have been some preliminary studies linking astaxanthin to improvements in cognitive function in human studies and animal models of dementia. And it may end up being the case that improving the health of the immune system of the brain by targeting inflammation is the best way to protect the brain from dementia in the long term. Whether you're treating your blockages or not, finding the supplements that you think make the most difference for you is one of the goals you have to pursue. So put astaxanthin on the list and give it a spin. And compare it to all of the other things that you might try, which we'll review on this podcast one at a time. to give you the information that you need to make the right decisions about what to take and how to take it and how to decide what works for you. With that, we'll wrap up today's episode and say thank you for joining us. And please share this with anyone who might need it. And plan to follow this over the long term, because the story of blockages is not a simple story to tell, but you heard it here first. This will change healthcare. See you next time.